All right, I think we are live. So I'm going to give just a minute to make sure everybody gets logged in, and then we'll get started. But while I do that, I'm going to give a shout out to Chris and Mark Pollard, who I talked to earlier. So shout out. Thanks for joining. All right. I guess we will get started. We got quite a few people on, and I'm sure we'll get more people joining as we go. One thing to note too, that we post all of our webinars on our website. So when you go to sporecyte.com under the Pro Resources tab, you'll be able to go and find past webinars. So we're trying to provide, information that helps all of our inspectors, understand our product anyway and help you market and, increase your business. So with that being said, the title of today's webinar is to review the Sporecyte report, kind of go over some of the nuances, a little bit about our lab, a little bit more that we've covered before, but I want to go through again just some things about Sporecyte and our overall company, just to let you know how big our company really is, and to let you know that you are working with a company that's experts in the world at what we're doing. So, which is really exciting to be part of this. So we've got a quick agenda, introduction about Sporecyte. I'm not even going to talk about this. I'm just going to get going, but because we'll get there when we get there. A little bit about me. My name's Jim Bates. I'm the Director of Sales for Sporecyte. My email address is jim.bates@techsite.com. TechSite is the name of our parent company. So, kind of my bio, while I've been here at TechSite, I'm closing in on 4 years. I've worked from the very beginning on our mold and environmental products to develop our data set for this project. I worked with a world-renowned mycologist, John Haynes. He was the state mycologist for the state of New York for lots of years. He was also an instructor at the McCrone Institute, which is the preeminent learning institution in the U.S. for mold and mycology and things like that. The lab that helped us develop the product was Air Allergen out of Atlanta, and they provide us with the data, the images, the samples that we needed to create the initial data set. So once we got the data set working, we worked with the AI team to train models, our AI algorithms. We used to train models every day as we were building the product. We still do a lot of training. Dylan McIntosh, who is now our lab director, he's also the product manager now for the company, or for the product. And I'll get a little bit into him more, but just want to go over that. So our concept with the product is to be totally focused on home inspectors. So everything we do is based on trying to improve our product for you and your clients. And so then now I'm implementing, the rollout of the Sporecyte product. Let's see. So if you have any questions, put those into the chat channel here in our webinar, and we'll answer those periodically. So with that, I'm going to do a quick question check, which there's no questions that I need to answer. All right, so quick introduction into Sporecyte, and which is I kind of alluded to is part of something bigger. I'm going to come back to this in a second. So TechSite is the parent company. Sporecyte is a vertical within this overarching umbrella company, TechSite. So TechSite was founded in 2013. It was a technology transfer from the University of Utah that some investors bought and have been building this company ever since. So we literally are world leaders at machine learning, artificial intelligence, which machine learning is a deeper part of that, using computer vision, digital microscopy to detect images. In our case, we're doing microscopic mold spores and indoor air particulate. Digital microscopy using digital microscopes to focus on these very small samples, which presents lots of problems. It took us quite a bit of work to figure out how to do it and become experts at it. We focus on air samples, which would be, our environmental things right now, liquids, smearables, for diagnostic testing. And TechSite is used by labs, pathologists, doctors, veterinarians, and home inspectors around the world. So here's the three verticals. So you've got environmental diagnostics, which is Sporecyte, the company that you're working with, or the vertical within TechSite. TechSite itself does human diagnostics, and we have an animal, which would be companion animals and working animals, which we have under VetScan Imagist. So for these animals, we've partnered with a company called Zoetis. It used to be Pfizer Animal Health. It's a publicly traded company under the ticker symbol ZTS. We white label our diagnostic analysis for them, and with them we're around the world, and we're doing hundreds of thousands of samples all the time. I shouldn't say daily, but monthly, hundreds of thousands plus. In the human space and in both animal and human, we do blood, urine, fecal matter, some dermatology tests, some bacteria tests, and other things. So all kinds of tests that are done on that. And then obviously environmental, we're doing mold sampling. So our lab and how we're changing the game. So part of our thinking on how we're changing the game is once we got our algorithm, our software to be as good or better than the current methodology for analyzing and reporting on mold samples, then it became, what's our channel going to be, where we decided it was going to be working with home inspectors. So then the challenge became, my overarching thought was, how do we make home inspectors' lives better? Which is a weird thing to think about, but there's quite a few things that go into that, and preeminent in that is our report. So we'll get to that as we go on. But the other thing is, we're always trying to continuously innovate to maintain our leadership position and be the best possible lab, the best possible, service provider for you and your customers. So, part of number one, making your life better, our thinking was, how do we create a report that makes your life better? The easy answer was, make a report that makes your home buyer and real estate agents' lives better. So that's providing a report that's clear, fast to read, easy to understand, and provides high value. So those are the foundations, for making your life better. So spend less time, trying to help your home buyer understand that report. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back down to this. Okay, our lab. So this slide just kind of covers what the current state of other labs are versus the things we're doing that are game changers. Many of you know that the current labs, they use a human looking through a microscope to read, to look at the spores and to manually count those. So it's just expensive and time consuming to do that. So the labs can realistically only look at 30% of the trace. We'll cover what the trace is, but that's the particulate that gets laid down in an air cassette. So they can only look at a part of the sample, and then they use statistics to kind of normalize that sample as if there was an even distribution across the slide. But we find that there is more often than not an equal distribution throughout the slide. We'll cover that more in a second. So what we do is we use our AI to read 100% of the sample. And the great thing about computers is they never get tired. The other cool thing is we're always looking for the same thing. So whether it's Monday or Friday, wherever we're looking, the same thing, the same software is looking for the same characteristics of these mold samples. So, and the spores. So that makes us consistent across all samples and time. So the other thing that we do that's really unique is we're looking for some strings of spores, why that's a differentiator, and clusters of spores, which I'll get more to further on. And that helps us be more accurate. And then finally, we do have a human do a review of the AI before we send out the report. This is a slide that just shows kind of that 30% versus 100% of this sample analysis. So you can see here, we've got these kind of clumps of things that you may or may not find under the human analysis, since you're only doing part of the sample, but we find everything. So again, helps us be more accurate, more consistent. Super important in not undercounting or overcounting, but giving you the most correct possible counts. So as I mentioned before, Dylan McIntosh is our lab director. So he's a PAACB certified spore analyst, which is Pan American Association Certification Bureau or something like that. But he's got that. He's also ran a lab in Chicago for a number of years. He's done tons of building samples, work for clients, as well as reading spores on the slides manually. Now he can do it with our software. He's just a great guy, very knowledgeable, where he's an expert. I just know enough to get by, but I'm not the expert in what we're doing. He is. We're working towards our AIHA and MLAP certifications. We're working on that now. So we're going to try and get that in 2023. We are also a licensed mold lab in the state of Texas. So the Sporecyte report. So as one of our inspectors, Don Hart, puts it, report, 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 which he's told me many times. So here's an example. On the left hand, we've got kind of some screenshots of our report versus what our competitor report looks like. I call that the matrix report because it really is, as those of you who have been doing mold testing have received this report from various labs. It's not obvious, quickly what you've got. And you also have to interpret what these results mean for your client. So that takes time and also additional liability on your part to figure out what's going on. So we'll cover more of this as we go through our report. So let's see, I think I've got a couple questions I'm going to look at. So there's somebody asked a question. Josh, sorry about that. Josh asked the question, is Sporecyte targeted more toward home inspectors or industrial hygienists / mold assessment professionals as well? So our real focus is on home inspectors. So we are getting more industrial hygienists and mold assessment professionals as users of our product, but the product was really developed with the home inspector and the home buyer in mind. But I think that it dovetails very well into industrial hygienists and assessment professionals. My initial thinking for industrial hygienists they would want to do more of the report interpretation. So they would like that matrix style report better because it wouldn't be so clear. But I'm finding that industrial hygienists and mold assessment professionals really like our report. So that was something I didn't expect. And I'm really delighted to have found out that that's happening. So, but that was not our initial goal. So Dylan gave me the correct interpretation of the PAACB certification. So it's a Pan American Aerobiology Association Certification Board. And that is to get that, you have to take a bunch of classes. You need to know all about the mold spores, what they grow on, what they're, all kinds of things. Like, I don't know any of that kind of stuff. I know what the mold spore looks like, but that is really detailed. And I know every few years you need to go back and take a new test and pass, that's recertify for that to get that. So it really is a big deal. See, there's another question. Jeremy asked, will Dylan ever talk with clients about their findings? What reasons are there for not including pictures of spores on the report? Speaking from experience, I just like having them on the reports. So if there are any reasons they don't make it on there, I want to know so I can make sure I'm not the reason. So typically we don't have Dylan talk with clients about their findings. We did discuss early on about having we call it Ask the Expert, where the home buyer could make an appointment with Dylan or another expert analyst and could review the report. We might bring that back at some point, but we really didn't ever have any demand for it. We have had some inspectors just call me, and I usually go over the first report with every inspector so I can show them, the nuances of the report, pretty much what we're going to go through here, what we're seeing in the pictures, things like that. So the other part of that question, what are the reasons for not including pictures of spores on the report? We always include the pictures except in circumstances where there was only one sample. So we have added the ability for our report to now put pictures into reports that only have one sample. So I think you'll be seeing that in the future. because we have had some applications where it wasn't a home inspector that was just sending in one sample, but we don't encourage that for sure for home inspectors. We always want you to have an outside sample and then the indoor samples for air samples. So that would be, where there be a single sample, that would be outside of the application for a home inspector. Let's see. So Dylan just wrote a quick note. Analysts add the images for the report that are of interest. So not all spores make it into the photos. So we're really looking for adding photos, adding pictures that would really be important to you. So spores that really don't mean anything aren't included. Let's see. Yeah, so you would also notice in the past, and even now, if you don't include an outdoor sample, you won't get the at a glance page or the highlights. Then there was a question, will you be adding verbiage about dangerous spores? So part of our continuous innovation is trying to improve the report on feedback that we get from inspectors, and we will be updating our report, and I'll go into more of that at the end. And we will be adding a fungal glossary that will kind of cover the different spores. I'll cover more of that at the end. But one thing to note is that the analysis and reporting we give, our report isn't from a perspective of we're health professionals. So we're not going to say these are the healthy spores or these are bad spores. So we just report that these are the spores we found and the elevation levels that we find on those. So, all right, I better get moving. So cover page is pretty straightforward. Dylan signs this, puts his stamp on there. We've got location, address, who it was sampled by, which would be the home inspector. Eventually, sometime near the end of this year, we'll be able to add some different things on this, like branding, but that's coming down the road. Sample date, things like that. So once you get inside the report, it's really divided into 3 categories. You've got the at a glance, which are a little bit different for air samples, which is shown here, and surface samples, which you'll see as we dive deeper in. The second section is the lab results. So this would be our interpretation of what the typical matrix report looks like. And you'll see that we break this part of the report down into different groups. So you've got this predominantly indoor water-related group, indoor, outdoor, and then outdoor spores. So we'll see more about that in a little bit. And then we do provide the actual images, and we've got 3 different views of images, and I'll get to that as we go further in, but just give you the quick overview. So the at a glance page, this is designed to be the only page that your home buyer and real estate agent should look at. Ideally, this is all they need. Do I have a problem? Do I not have a problem? So you can see we have a graphic, green, yellow, red. Is it normal, or is there none? There's always spores in the air. So the green, though, tells them like you've just got a normal situation. Slight is a slight indication that there might be a problem, and that's a little bit nuanced. But then you've got, there's a major problem where you definitely need to, have a further assessment on the property. So we do try and give some direction. We're not at the property, we're not doing the inspection, but we do try so we make this interpretation. So we take that out of your hands. You don't have to try and interpret what the report is saying. You just email this, you forward the email to your client, and they'll see this. But we do give them, it's an elevated level or a slight. We try and give them an overview of what that means and some recommendations on how to proceed, as well as some resources on our website. But that's the at a glance page. So here, this is what the airborne at a glance pages look like, the green, yellow, red. And this is what the surface sample at a glance looks like. So we're saying we found mold or we didn't find mold. So it's present or absent. We're not making the quantitative. We're just saying we found it or we didn't find it. Kind of the recommendations I kind of covered. We make the call on if you have a problem and don't have a problem, or a slight problem. So you don't have to interpret the matrix report. Since we're not at the home, we can't give really specific direction, but we can help you try and give some good direction to your clients. The Mold Resource Center on our website can give the home buyers some more information if they want to dig in deeper. The goal of the report is to protect the home buyer and their investment. So the report isn't, you're not really using it to try and blow up a real estate deal. You're just trying to use it, to protect that home buyer and figure out if there are problems, and then, figure out what the solution to those problems are, and then get the deal closed. So air sample lab results. So this is where we've got the different kind of groups of spores. So this first group of spores is the most important group of spores for detecting, water issues in a home, in a building, because this group grows well under, conditions where there's water found, and it grows well indoors on building materials. So as you can see in this example, we don't really find these spores often or in quantities in our outdoor samples, but this is something that we're looking for. But when we do find these things indoors, it's really important to take note. So we highlight, the red highlights are higher concentrations, and the yellow highlights are slight concentrations. In the future, we'll add, when we find something and we put a number in here that's not a high concentration, that's normal, we'll highlight that with green, but that will come in future updates with the report. But that's something that we're working on for the future. There'll be a couple other nuances on this I'll go over in a second, but indoor outdoor spores, these are the most common spores. They're found, out in the wild, as I like to call it, and will grow indoors on building materials, when there's a moisture problem. So we look at those, but we separate those from this group that's very highly indicative of a problem. And then we have indoor outdoor spores, which we don't have a picture of, but that's a whole page. So I kind of went over this thing without looking at this, so I'm just going to skip it. And if you guys want to come back, you can. One thing I did want to cover specifically is we've got this group called aspen string and Aspergillus penicillium. And what you'll see up here on this part of the report, this says at the very top of this predominantly indoor aspen string. So, and then down here in the indoor outdoor, we've got Aspergillus penicillium. Now this is something I want to point out, because this is really cool what we do, very different from other labs, and important to know the differentiation here. So this spore, this group of spores, it's the same thing. The nuance here is on this top group, we're looking for strings of spores, versus this bottom group, we're looking for the individual spore and making the count there. So when you look at the very bottom of our fungal report for totals, the number for aspen strings not included in that total. The total would be the strings would be totaled up as individual spores under aspen, and then that rolls down to the total. So this will help you understand that better. So this particular mold, as it grows, this is a kind of a cartoonish example, but you can see it's kind of like a dandelion. You've got this growth structure here. Off that growth structure, you've got spores that grow one on top of each other in a chain or a string. The reason that we look for those, and this is like the reason why looking at 100% of the sample is really critical to getting the best count we can, is that if you find these or miss these, you can overcount or undercount. So you can see these are actual examples from samples. Here are these strings of spores. So when we find these strings of spores, it's just highly indicative that you're closer to an active growth structure. As the water problem goes away, or as mold breaks off of the growth structure, floats away, it dries up and turns into individual spores. So, something like here down in this corner, you've got these two spores. But these strings of spores are really important to note. Like when you're finding those, that's really indicative that there is a problem here and you're close to it. When you're just finding these spores in the individual setting, they're further away. So I hope that clarifies or helps you guys understand that. So please feel free to ask questions if I didn't cover everything. Let's see, I just want to make sure I covered all the questions. Looks like I've got them. So we kind of covered that. In addition to reporting on mold spores, our software looks for particulates, a bunch of different kinds of particulates, a lot that we report here and some that we don't report because they're not so critical. So for particulates, we give you particulates as just part of every report. So we've got pollen, skin fragments, human versus animal skin fragments, carbon dust, soil, starch. We can report on fibers. So we give you the counts of those. And then we also count up everything that we find on the slide. Mold spores, these particulates up here that we've reported on, and there's other particulates that we don't report on, but we find. We total all of that, and then we put that into this total particulate group. So we also size the total particulate, or we put it in a group by size. So you've got less than 2.5 microns or ultrafine particulate, 2.5 to 10, and greater than 10 microns. So eventually we will have, so this is going to indicate, indoor air quality for particulates. We don't report on any VOCs, any gases. We only report on things that can be seen. We don't see the gases. We don't collect anything on, VOCs. So we're going to come up with an indoor air quality index for particulates that will be similar to the mold, green, yellow, red, that will be based on tens of thousands of homes that we've sampled, and those samples that will give a good idea kind of home air cleanliness. So that's coming. Actual images. It's just amazing that we can provide, images of what's really in the air. Dylan and I have been, in meetings with, professors at universities, government officials that study air quality, and we show them pictures of what's in the air, and their eyes just get big, and they're like, we've never seen what's in the air. We've studied this for years, in some cases decades, and we've never seen these images. So it really is amazing to be able to provide images of what's actually in the air. So as you can see here, this is an air sample, and this is our images page is designed. It's got these two trace images, then a zoomed image, and then notable objects. And as Dylan pointed out, things that aren't, interesting or important, if it's just an outdoor spore, we don't show pictures of that. We try and show pictures of things that are meaningful and will add color to the report. So trace, what the trace is on a air cassette. I'm going to use a PosiTrack, but I've also got an aerosol. So we use both, or we report with both types of air collection. So on the slide, there's a gel pad. I don't know if I'm going to get it at the right angle, but there's a gel pad on there. You can see it a little bit right here. And as air gets sucked through the cassette onto that gel pad, it creates this linear particulate line. We call that the trace. So we give you the outside trace next to the inside trace. So you can do a visual comparison of like, how does my indoor air compare with my outdoor air? Ideally, the outdoor air should have more, junk, more particulate matter than the indoor air, because you would really want your indoor air, your HVAC system to be filtering out, particulate, keep your home and air as clean as possible. So this is a pretty dirty sample. Then you can see, this zoomed in 30x sample. You can see these kind of blue kind of things. Those are skin fragments. You can see some spores, different kinds of spores. I'm not going to go into detail on that right here, but that gives you kind of an overview, and again, kind of a look at just how dirty that air is. Then you got the notable objects, which is where we really call out things that are more important to that report. This just describes the trace a little bit. Yeah, I didn't even need to pull out that PosiTrack. So this is a PosiTrack. You see, this is the sample material that gets laid down as air gets sucked through that cassette, and then this is what we see. So the 30x zoom, you can see these blue. We use a light blue stain or a medium blue stain, and the things that absorb the stain would be like skin fragments. So these are human skin fragments. You can tell the animal skin fragments are distinctly different from human skin fragments. So it actually is really easy to tell the difference. Let's see, notable objects. So you can see, as we talked about, this aspen strings, you can see these are stuck together. Sometimes the string will come in and lay down flat, which provides a nice image of this where it's all, kind of laid out. Sometimes it'll come in vertically and then it'll kind of smush down and you'll see a blob of spores. So this is our image page for a surface sample. So you'll see what we found was light cladosporium and moderate eulocladium. So these dark spores would be eulocladium. So we're just saying that we found fungal growth. So this is just a kind of side by side of a pretty dirty, very dirty sample versus a fairly clean sample. Ideally, there wouldn't be anything on there, but there's not much on there. So just to give you a kind of visual representation and everything in between. Some cool kind of images. I think we were going to have if anybody's got an idea and would want to identify what these different objects are, mold spores or other types of objects, feel free to enter into chat and see if you can come up with what those are. I'll give you a minute to go over that. Okay, so I don't want to take too much time. Let's see. We did have a question from Craig. Can you include typical indoor, outdoor average for that state for the time of year? So we don't have that kind of data. We like to, I know there's other companies that do have glossaries by, area and zip code that give you kind of an average number of spores that they find in the air during the year. We do not have that data, but we feel taking the outside sample is equally as relevant. So I hope that answers that, even though I didn't dive too deeply into it. Maybe at the end, Dylan will come on and give us a deeper dive onto that definition. Okay, so Mark guessed a bug, which is good. So this is some kind of insect. I like calling the lobster claw. I was joking with Ashley, like, oh, this was obviously a sample from Maine and we got a microscopic lobster's claw in there, but some kind of insect or, microscopic bug. So this is roughly, I think we guessed that this was about 80 microns, might be a little bit smaller than that. Dylan might know. So Jeremy guess that B is fiberglass, which is a pretty good guess, but it's incorrect. But I like that you went for it. We should have put a piece of fiberglass in here. This is an insect scale. So you'll see on my next slide, I've got another insect scale. It's fun to find these things because they really are cool. We have a lot of different unique kinds of insect scales that we find. Again, we've got, this weird kind of bug. This is Stachybotrys, which is a really interesting spore. When this is a young spore, it's really white. And as it gets older, as it matures, it gets this more mottled texture, which you can see on this, the texture is getting mottled. And then it turns into a dark black, which this part of a spore at the bottom shows you how dark black that gets. So it starts really white, and then it goes into this. And it grows in kind of looks like almost a flower with a center, and then around the outside you'll have these different pods, and we actually look for those and can count those. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is, as I was developing the data set, I would kind of be looking at these images, and I'm like, oh, I see all these faces in these things. So I started just doing little screenshots of what I was seeing. So I thought I'd include those here. John Haynes, I'd show these to John or send these to John. He's like, is this really what you're seeing when you're looking at these mold spores? I'm like, of course, down here on the right, I've got the lion, then I've got, down here at the right on the bottom, the dog, I call that one the fish. And I've got a monkey, another dog, and up here at the top left, it looks like some kind of a bug. I think that's just a random mold spore with some weird stuff going on. Maybe is it pulled off a growth structure? Or part of a growth structure, and amazingly, we found a microscopic Barney on this one, which I sent out to the team one day thinking I was really funny. this picture right here is just a growth structure, with mold spores, growing off that. So I just thought that looked really cool. And then here on the right is another insect scale. So just a really different and unique look of one. All right, so then we get to the very last page of our report, which is the resources page, which is designed to give the home buyer, some more information about mold, and then they can go to our website and dig further into resources. And we're going to continue to improve and refine these things as we go forward. So going through a few of the upcoming things, updates and things that we're doing, as far as our chain of custody form, which, right now you have to fill it out, a paper form. It's on our website where you can type some stuff out, but then you print it out and fill it out and then put it in the package of samples when you send it to us. So we're working on having a chain of custody app. So you'll be able to fill that out on your phone and tablet. So a lot of it will be pre-populated for you. You can do it in the field, and then you don't have to include the printed form. We'll get it digitally. Let's see. So I mentioned, for that total particulate, we're working on having that interpretation for you. We're also going to include a mold glossary at the end of the report. So the different kinds of mold, it'll have definitions and pictures of that, which I think will address one of those questions about, do we do any definitions of mold spores? We don't say, hey, this is a health risk or not, but we say, here's the mold, and then they could go research from there. Giving you a sneak peek for the air pump that we have designed. This is the Sporecyte air pump that we are targeting for release in June. So there have been some supply chain and COVID problems, as you know, in China. So we were hoping initially to have this. We started working on it over a year ago, and we'd hoped to have it delivered last December. Now we're looking at June. So when we get that, we will stop selling the egg pump that we sell in a starter kit, and we will sell this pump. And our target price on this pump will be about $99. It'll be a plug-in pump, but it's calibratable, works with the Positrax and aerosols. It has a 5-minute auto off, and this white stripe here, there's 5 LEDs, and as your minutes go down, the LEDs turn off. So it has kind of a countdown timer. You can also mount it on a tripod. So it's going to be very robust, and it's about 8 inches tall, 6 inches, long, and 3 inches wide, roughly. So it's going to be nice, but that's coming. But, buy that starter kit. If you're not already doing mold testing, start with the starter kit and then, upgrade as you get going. But, we do want you to upgrade from that. The starter pump is just to get you going. I mentioned on that cover page, we'll get to, some more branding, a logo, stuff like that is, at the end of the year, but that's coming, but it's not going to come immediately, but we're going to try and get that before the end of the year. We're going to be doing a report update, and we'll have some more things to talk about as time goes by. So how the air capture cassettes work. As I mentioned, we use both the Positrax, which is this rectangular air cassette. It's really strong and robust. It's, really good to ship because it's just got so much more plastic. So less worries about having damage in shipping. Also, it's, really easy to write on the outside of that sample, because we need you to write on the outside of the sample, where the aerosol, it's harder to write on this curved surface. But we want you to make sure that you get the Zephon aerosols, and we sell both of these on our website. The aerosols by Zephon, which is now Environmental Express. So as you guys probably know, there's a vertical, kind of that vertical rectangular inlet, and then on the exit, or what you put on the pump, is this round, circular thing. So you've got, in this case, a full microscope slide with that gel pad. Trying to get the gel pad. You can see the outline of it there. And then, so it's a full microscope slide with the aerosol. Let's see. There's a really tiny piece of glass, a very thin, tiny piece of glass. And on this, you've got the sticky surface, the gel pad. So these could be damaged a little bit more easily, but they both work great. Whichever one you like. They're both excellent, and they both do the job. So, Either one works great. We want you to do 5-minute samples at 15 liters per minute. We really want you to always provide an outdoor sample. And if there's always lots of information on sporecyte.com. We've got some videos, and we put these webinars up on the website, and we put those on the Pro Resources tab. So with that, we will go to questions. And if anybody's got a question, put it in the chat. So there was a question, do we prefer the PosiTrack over the Aerocell? They both work great. There are reasons that we like the PosiTrack because it's the full slide. We like having the full slide, which provides some benefits, especially in the lab. But either one works great. They both will work just fine. So either one that you prefer, we can use. So we also do, to mention, we do the air cassette sampling. We also do surface sampling. So the price for each lab analysis and report, it's the same price. Okay. Awesome. So got a note from Joe, no questions. Look forward to growing with you guys. Thank you so much. This has been, I can't tell you how exciting it is to see, the level of interest and the growth that our company's getting. Having worked on this for years and seeing it come to fruition is really exciting. And working with home inspectors, it's such a great group of people to be working with. It's just excellent. I can't say, how nice it is. So with that, I think we could end our webinar. So Ashley's been our moderator. I'll let her tell me if I should wait any longer or if she's good for me to end our webinar. So Ashley, if you put something into my chat channel. So I'm not seeing anything, so it must mean there's no, so she just said no more questions. So I'm gonna let everybody go, finish the rest of their day. Thank you so much for attending. You can always rewatch this again. We got a bunch of thank yous, and thank you guys for being here. So we look forward to working with you. Call me with any questions, anything I can do to help. My phone number's in the webinar. You guys have my number, my cell phone, my email. So look forward to working with you. Thanks much.